Just tell us what beyond the beans really means to you. Over to you, Raven.
Yeah, so he's actually an 83-year-old English guy, and he saw this link on LinkedIn, and he says, "Please tell the author in a English accent that his next book that he writes, he needs to call it Spill the Beans."
And I'm going to run with that for sure. But what does beyond the beans mean to you? I mean, when I told you I've written a book about you, or rather, there's a chapter in the book about you, and it's called Beyond the Beans. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, I think it's about the different things that CFOs are doing in corporate South Africa. I mean, just by the title, Beyond the Beans, we are bean counters. We seem to be bean counters. But I think in our profession and in our training, we can really make a difference in the businesses in which we're operating, in the societies in which we're operating as well.
Awesome. Tinyiko, to you, same question.
I think typically when you think of an accountant, everyone thinks of a boring person who's always worried about the numbers, trying to make things balance. Beyond the beans for me means that we're more than that, that we're adapting to change, we're adapting to what the world needs, and we're starting to add value in businesses rather than just ticking off boxes. And stepping out of that box that people perceive financial professionals to be in.
And let's just go through your career. Like, give us, of course, it's in the book, but just give us a high level how you got to the point of where you are.
Yes, sure. So I studied, obviously, accounting. I did academic articles at the University of Pretoria. So looking at this building, it almost reminds me of the campus there.
Tax.
Yes, tax. And I did academic articles because I wanted to do something different and also just give back to the students. So I enjoyed that. Went to PwC for my articles. And then I did a few months secondment in the US. I worked at MTN Group in their financial reporting division, and I then moved to Royal Bafokeng Holdings, which is where I am now. I've been there, this is my 10th year actually, and over time I've worked to, become the CFO at Royal Bafokeng Holdings. Beyond, I think, work, I think my career has been defined by learning and always seeking to learn. So wanting to study, 2 years ago, I studied as well. So just trying to adapt and see how I can improve myself as a professional, even beyond just accounting.
Okay. Charl, over to you.
Yeah, I think, we are moving beyond accounting. Gone are the days of just debits and credits. Now the CFO is a trusted advisor to the CEO, and they actually, and this is not just our unique situation, but they look to the CFO as that, the person to assist with strategy, identifying, executing, taking it beyond. Like I say, I mean, we're all accountants, we can all do numbers, but it's what's beyond those numbers. What's the strategy of the business? Well, we have to be change agents. We have to be, I wouldn't quite say visionaries, but you have to look into the future, and you have to form a picture, and as part of a C-suite, you have to be that person that is always there to bring things together at the end of the day. And that's why for me it's beyond the beans. I nowadays when I get a technical accounting memo that consists of 80 pages, I close it immediately.
Why? That's interesting.
No, I'll tell you now, because I need to sort of gather my thoughts and prepare myself to read it. I still do, okay, and I still comment on it. But yeah, I think it's for me. I've enjoyed that part of the business as well. But on a personal level, although I'm still responsible for it, I've also moved on. Mm-hmm. I want to do other things. I want to get involved in call it the hard part of the business, where you can influence, make a change, see your results, mm-hmm, versus just reporting at the end of the day because the JSE says so, or, some standard requires it of us. Yeah. So that to me is what the book is about, that beyond the beans.
And your story, how you ended up as an accountant and ended up as a CFO of one of the biggest mining companies in the world. How did you get there?
Yeah, I always tell the story. A relative of ours worked on a mine, and he was in those days a chief personnel officer, or as they refer to themselves nowadays, human resource officers. And I remember, what stood out for me is he had a company car and a company house, and it was a Honda Ballade, and I thought, that's what I want one day. And that inspired me then to study. But I wasn't always good with people, so and numbers seemed to be a good direction to move in. There were lots of jobs available. If you were an accountant, and it wasn't quite, you could sort of balance work or studying and partying at varsity. So that's how I ended up in that direction. But I had a bursary, from a mining company that was called Goldfields of South Africa in those days. They were in 75 Fox Street. They paid for my studies, and then ultimately I ended up on a mine. And, on the 15th of this year, it would be 30 years that I've been working for the same company. We've had many names. But yeah, I think it's just been, so rewarding.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've always I always wanted to do more and learn more and, get out there and go underground and understand the business and be at that sharp end. But I always realize that I'm rooted in accounting. And I always say to people, don't stray too far from that, because that is your anchor. And just over many years, lots of experiences. I always say hard work, and that's where I think a lot of the and sorry, forgive me if you think you fall into that category, a lot of the younger generation is not patient enough. It's hard work first, it's patience second, and you will be rewarded and you will be seen. And that has always been my motto.
Awesome. And people, when they hear Sibanye-Stillwater, they think you guys do. Maybe just explain what exactly.
Yes, no. So we are a mining company. We got formed in 2013. We got carved out of Goldfields. We started with 3 legacy mines in South Africa: Beatrix, Kloof, and Driefontein. They were considered old assets, short life. In 2013, we were told they only had 10 years of life. It's now 12 years later, and they still have 10 years of life.
Okay.
But they have been the bedrock of our growth story. So, we realized that we wanted to move into other areas, and we moved into platinum group metals. We did 4 acquisitions in platinum group metals, and that made us, those 4 acquisitions made us the largest primary producer of PGMs, or platinum group metals. Now, just by definition, if there's any Anglo people here, primary production means we break the rock and we deliver the metal at the other end.
Yeah.
They are bigger in sales. So yeah, that's just, and then, through that, we acquired a company in the US called Stillwater, and we didn't want to lose that corporate identity. And that's how we ended up, because when we started, Sibanye means we are one. And our CEO always reminds us that he wants to be number one. So that's where the name comes from. And then we decided to keep that identity of Stillwater and Sibanye-Stillwater.
Yeah.
And now, we've realized where the world is moving in terms of electrification of vehicles. We're not saying it's here yet, but ultimately we have to get there in terms of global warming and climate change. And we've decided that that's a pivot for us. So we're moving into green energy metals.
Raven, I didn't ask you your accountant journey, how you ended up being counter. Now we have to put it in quotes because it's obviously now beyond the beans. How did you end up in the profession?
Interestingly enough, after I got a primary degree, a Bachelor of Accounting, I actually also ended up on a mine shaft, Impala Platinum in Rustenburg.
Okay.
And I worked there for a year, and my dad kept on asking me, when am I going to become a CA?
Okay.
And I had no interest in that. And I think through his perseverance, he convinced me to serve articles. So I served articles and studied part-time CTA and forward wind 20 years now, CFO at Trident Steel. And yeah, it's been a great journey. I've been in the steel industry for a long time, understand it. But like Charl said, we root ourselves in being accountants. That's the bedrock of nature of what we do. But we need to be more than that. Understanding the external environment in which we operate, being strategic in nature is key. Currently, the theme in our business is with ArcelorMittal announcing the shutdown of the long steel products. It just creates immense pressure in our business. We have to resource the steel that we purchase from them. We out at India at the moment, getting that steel in. And ArcelorMittal at the moment is producing the entire year's consumption that we would take in 2 months. We need to take that steel in 2 months and pay for it 30 days later. So you have to plan, you have to understand, scanning that environment is key. That's some of the issues that we deal with, as accountants.
Forward looking, that sounds forward.
Yep.
Whereas I think when everybody thought they're going to become accountants, they thought, okay, we're just going to be reporting on what happened previously. Is that a fair statement?
No, absolutely. I think the days of us spending a lot of time and keeping our heads into board reports are gone. We need to be at the forefront of the business, understand what's going on. And the reporting is just a factor of what happened in the business, But making the right decisions, taking the right decisions, and not delaying the decision is equally important in our lives as well.
Yeah. When I interviewed you, you talked a lot about people empowerment. How is that? And because when you think of an accountant, you think of a very stiff individual with a calculator in the corner of the room, right? Who's not a people person, so to speak. Someone who was probably a geek in school or something like that. But what about that people management aspect?
I think in our business specifically, we're in the business of steel, but we supply into the automotive industry in South Africa. So 2 distinct industries. And to get that skill in people across two industries is pretty difficult. So the people developments become imperative in our business. We need to create a pipeline of individuals, create a talent pool. So that's the first reason. The second reason I think should concern all of us as South African citizens. We know what the unemployment rate is in the country at the moment. Since 2010, and that's 15 years ago, our growth rate in South Africa has not been stellar. So if we are not growing as a country and as companies, we are not creating sufficient opportunities, specifically for school leavers and university graduates. And if you think about it, from 2010, it's 15 years. We've got another 10 years to get to a generation. And if we don't upskill our workforce at the basic level, so I'm speaking of technicians and artisans, not so much engineers and accountants, I think in 10 years from now, we'll lose a generation in our workforce, a skilled generation. And I think that's probably the key driver in our business as to why we skill people in the manner in which we do.
Awesome. And now with technology and the idea that technology are going to take up jobs, that even makes the challenge even bigger, I would think. I don't know what your thoughts are.
I think it's relevant to a certain extent. As an example, in our business, the type of machinery that we operate is electromechanical machinery. Yeah. You need an electrician. AI or a robot's never going to do that well. Okay. I believe so. All right. It's never going to do that for you. But we need those technical skills at a basic level. I'm a firm believer of that.
Awesome. And you've done an MBA. Luleka, the MBA was not at GIBS, but it's an MBA nonetheless. And I don't know, many CAs perhaps grapple with the idea of whether do I need to do an MBA. I know I have thought of it as well. Why go and do an MBA when it's marketed that, the accounting qualification should be sufficient in business, should be. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, so I considered the MBA simply because I felt that people development or the HR side of a business was lacking. I latched onto that. I completed the MBA, and I eventually, figured out what is it that we're actually looking at from a people development perspective. At the end of the day, I think it really boils down to ROI on people.
Okay.
And I've actually come to the conclusion there's a couple of things us as leaders of businesses need to do. We need to remunerate and reward people properly, first thing. We need to be people enablers or mentors to our workforce. And that simply starts to change your focus to worry about the well-being of your employee or co-worker rather than has that employee actually met a deadline.
Mm-hmm.
You need to consistently raise the bar in terms of what you do and how you do. It brings in inclusiveness into the business, and you start to share in the success of the business. And lastly, I think formal training is important in any organization.
Yeah.
It absolutely leads to development. So for those reasons, I think it's imperative as bean counters.
Yeah.
We understand the people side, the human side of our business, and how to interact with those.
Well, I qualified a long time ago. I qualified a long time ago, and I suppose for me, qualifying as a CA was really just such a blessing. When you are at that stage in your life when you don't know what you want to do, or even who you are, and so on, and coming across this profession, I don't know whether I found it or it found me. It may be any of the two. And I suppose, they sell the profession, and we all come in with this expectation of how the whole world was just going to open to us, and all of that. I don't think you think a lot about the responsibilities and how the world will change with that, but accountants have been very resilient in adapting to changes. I suppose, you walk into an audit and you are new, and it's a new industry, it's a new client, and in no time you have to familiarize yourself with this environment and so on. So I think that helped us to adapt quickly. But I suppose, I'm just glad I'm not a CFO or an auditor or anything like that today, because I sitting from a board perspective, just looking at all the changes, it's really just mind-blowing. And of course, changes also come with benefits in terms of, I just look at all the IT systems auditors are coming up with and so on, which, improve efficiencies. We always want to cut fees, so they've got to find ways of cutting those fees. But for me personally, it has been a real fulfilling journey because of just the flexibility of the profession. So I've been an internal auditor, I've been a CFO, I've run my own business, I sit on boards, this thing keeps pumping and pumping, it never stops. And with all those exposures, you just have to adapt into a new role, find a new self that can be a CFO. I was never, to be honest, very technically strong. I know I have CFOs here, so
CFOs are not necessarily technically strong.
Treading on dangerous ground.
Yeah.
And this is something I discovered very early on, because I remember when I was promoted at KPMG very early to be a manager. And I lasted 2 months. 2 months. Because, when I was training, it was challenging. I was putting together my own portfolios and challenging myself. Now I'm a manager. And I have to, manage, be operational, technical, and all those things. Yo, I was bored to death. And I mean, when you're young, you don't know what that is, right? I suppose later in life, then I realized, but oh, okay, I'm not technically strong. So I have to surround myself with people who are technically strong. And I always just going to provide the leadership, the strategy, the pioneering, and things like that. Yeah, so it's been very fulfilling.
And your book, of course, covers so many challenges and so many triumphs. We can't go through the whole book, but the ones that just come top of mind, these were the main challenges that I've gone through and how you overcome them. Perhaps share with us some life lessons from that.
The biggest challenge was managing people. You know, I can understand, you know, especially as an accountant.
Yeah.
I'm naturally not a people's person. And all of a sudden, you know, you have to lead people.
Yeah.
And I really struggled with that. For me, that was the biggest challenge. Because when you're a visionary, you are so focused on the vision and getting there, right? And you forget that you need the people to get there, right? And you're dealing with all sorts of personalities, and especially leading accountants who think they are clever. So we are leading these clever people, and some of them are very smart and technical, but not very strategic in their thinking. And then some of them are conservative, and you have to now convince them that, you know, we have to get there. And on the way, they see all these potholes. Oh, I used to be so fed up. Okay. But later on, I realized, in fact, all these people who are let me start with the ones that are pessimistic. I then realized, in fact, these people are not a curse. They are a blessing, in the sense that in my rush to get there, sometimes I do miss the potholes. And sure, we can let's fix the potholes, but they'll find something else just because they are afraid to get there. And I was wise at the end now to say, no, we fix the potholes. Hey, we have a destination to get to. We have to get moving. And then there are those who are very sensitive, the people ones. I mean, sometimes in business, you have to make tough decisions, right? And they would be emotional about these decisions around people. And I'm a tough leader. I don't have all those little things sometimes. But I realized that, no, they're not a curse. They're actually a blessing, because I am too tough sometimes, right? And they help me soften a little bit, be sensitive to those decisions, and so on. But of course, I mean, being a black chartered accountant in South Africa was tough, especially when you have dreams to, you know, participate in the economy, achieve your dreams, feeling that you're entitled like everybody else, and then dreaming big, you know, challenging the status quo and things like that. And navigating the market with our dreams was one of the toughest things, because you have to convince people that you are not what they think you are, and you have to have a thick skin and be patient, and all of those things that when you have a vision, you just have to have those things, because otherwise you're going to quit on the way, right? But very fulfilling when you achieve those in spite of the obstacles that faced you. And for me, it was all about leaving a legacy. And very proud that I did manage to do that.
Awesome. And of course, what part of your legacy is, first Black female chartered accountant, and you, of course, with your firm, forming Gobodo, living the legacy and so on. It's been there. But I have to ask you about then women in finance, how you've seen yourself. Maybe it's just women in the professional setting, but what was your experience as a woman in finance, and are you seeing the landscape changing? Are glass ceilings being shattered or not? Or do you still think we are still behind?
No, I mean, certainly when things have changed from when you used to be the only person in the room, that was hard because you walked into an environment that was not prepared for you. I remember when I was being interviewed for the CFO position, I was heavily pregnant. And the insensitivity of the people who were interviewing me, you are pregnant, how are you going to manage as a CFO? Pregnant. And you think back now that probably today those questions would never be asked. And then you have to prove yourself to all of these people. I literally was on that job. I delivered the following day when I took my leave today and delivered the following day. Within a month, I had to leave my baby and go and prove myself. I mean, those things were very hurtful. I remember how bitter I was that I had to leave my baby after a month. But today, no, those challenges are not there, But I don't think the environment is better. But I just believe that women survive in corporate. They are not thriving, they are surviving. And worse in finance, I think, because it's already a tough environment in itself. If we have dreams of, I saw it was so frustrating to raise leaders and, position them and so on. And then they walk into your office one day and they say, Nonku or Mam Nonku or whatever. I'm thinking of starting a family. And now this thing of deadlines of a partner is not going to work. So I have to find a job that will,
Half day.
accommodate my needs. Yeah, that was hard.
Yeah.
Because indeed, whether you're a CFO, whether you're what, those deadlines are there.
Yeah.
Right? It's not a 9-to-5 job and so on. So we do need to create an environment where we can create the space for women to thrive as well. I think that is the biggest thing. And the sad thing for me is that, so when that lady is pulling down on her career, the men are not pulling down. They are moving forward. By the time your kids are grown, whatever, you've been left behind.
Yeah.
We are not going to be that CEO that the man has an opportunity to be.
Yeah.
And I had to make a choice in my own career. Divorced, raising your children on your own, ambitious. Something has to give, but my career is not going to give. So I ended up with broken kids who at 20 were asking me about, remember when we used to live with our grandmother? In fact, you even missed my preschool graduation. I'm like, you are 20. Why are we talking about this? Why are we talking about this?
Yeah.
But at some point, I realized that there's a hurt there,
Yeah.
and I can no longer ignore these things. My daughter, for a very long, until her 30s, believed I didn't love her because I was never there. So that's the price women have to pay. I suppose the whole system has to change to accommodate these ambitious women of today who deserves also to have a career.
I'll ask a simple question. Are you thriving or are you surviving? Or you can just tell us whether you feel like has it moved from where Mom Nonku was, or do you feel like we're still there? Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of what Mam Nonku says resonates, and I really feel that as the next generation, we're standing on shoulders of giants, because a lot of sacrifices of her generation had to be made so that we can be where we are today. I think of when I wanted to do my studies in 2023, and really as a mother to a 4-year-old, my first thought was I have to leave my child to go and study in the US for 2 months. That is my first thought, not whether I can do it, not whether if I'm competent, but that is the thought. And that is the burden, well, not say burden, that is the challenge that women have to go through, to think about how they, I won't even say balance, because there's never a balance, how they work through being a family mom and work through advancing their career. So I wouldn't say no progress has been made. I think that the sacrifices, Mam Nonku, of your generation, we are reaping the benefits of it. I think we've come a long way. Yes, we still have a long way to go. And for me as a leader, I'm always conscious of how we can try and make things better for the next generation, and try and learn from those experiences. So if I went through something difficult, there's no reason for the person that's coming after me to suffer, for me to say, no, because it was hard for me, it must be hard for you. So because it was hard for me, I don't want you to go through that. So I need to think about how I improve the lives of women, of young people who are maybe a man who's trying to be a present father for his family, who can't work the hard deadlines. Maybe he needs to go to his child's soccer game or whatever. So I think, am I thriving? I like to believe that we are at a place where it's better. I think things can always be worked on. I think the next challenge is how, as young people coming into positions of influence at such earlier stages in our careers, we need to balance that, because it is that way. When you're starting to peak, you're thinking about having a family and you have to make a call, and something has to give. It is either your marriage, it is either your children, it is either your career. And at some point you need to think about what you're willing to give less attention to.
And one surprising thing about you is your son and yourself, you share a birthday, right?
Yes, not by design.
Not by design.
God's plans, not mine.
You didn't do as an accountant, you didn't do the maths. Right?
No.
Count back.
No, I didn't. So I actually, if I had it my way, if I had done the maths, we would not have the same birthday.
Okay.
But I think God had a different plan for my life. But we share a birthday because I was in labor on my birthday, and he then showed up earlier. And it really changed the way I think about, I think you always become, children show you how selfish you are. And then he was born on my birthday. I was like, but now no one will care about me. It's all about you, But when I look at it, and the time period he was born in during COVID, and he reminds me of what a blessing it was during that peak pandemic to have a healthy child. And I see that as a blessing every time I think about that.
Awesome. And the one book or one personality writer that you cite in your interviews, Robin Sharma, and a particular book, a particular notion. I want you to expound on that.
Yeah, so still when I was studying, I read the book The Leader Who Had No Title by Robin Sharma. I think he's written quite a few books since then. And it really was at a time in my journey where there's this perception that for you to lead, you need to have this, I'm the CEO. One day when I'm this, I'm going to lead. One day when I'm a chartered accountant, I'm going to lead. And he talks about how in every area that you are in, you can be a leader and you can show up in excellence before someone needs to give you a title. Whether you're a grave digger, there's a fable, there's quite a few fables in the book, but it stood out for me because it meant that even before you are recognized or somebody grants you a title, you can still show up as your best. You can still take ownership of what you're doing. And it really shaped how I thought about my career, because I never set out to say one day I want to be the CFO of a company. That wasn't really the dream. It was, I'm going to do the best and show up in excellence in this piece that I've been entitled to. And when people give me something, they must know that it's in the best hands. And that if she says she's going to do it, she's going to do it. If she says she's going to show up, she's going to show up. And it was regardless of the position and regardless of who is watching you. Because I think sometimes people wait to be seen or to be recognized to then show up as their best self. But as you learn that it's about self-management and self-leadership, you show up as your best self even before expecting somebody to recognize you. And I think, like Charl said earlier, eventually that hard work and that patience, it pays off. But it should not be the recognition that is your motivator, but it should be what you as a leader aspire to be for yourself. And I think, I mean, I was watching a talk about Jeff Bezos the other day, and he was talking about the values of their businesses. And one of the things he said was professional pride in operational excellence. And it was that even if people are not watching you and there are things that you need to do unseen, you as a professional need to show up as your best, and you need to give your best regardless of who's watching you. So that quite resonated with me, because that's what I had learned from that Robin Sharma book, and that's what I've tried to carry throughout my journey.
And you know, when people hear Royal Bafokeng, they think of Platinum, the competitor to Sibanye-Stillwater. And so when you tell people, hi, I'm the CFO of Royal Bafokeng Holdings, they think you are in the dusty, you're somewhere in a dusty place in Rustenburg, mining. But explain, perhaps unpack what Royal Bafokeng Holdings does. What's its purpose and how does it align to you as an individual?
Sure. So Royal Bafokeng Holdings is the investment arm of the Royal Bafokeng Nation. So yes, the Bafokeng have their initial source of wealth through platinum, and the land that they own is where the largest platinum deposits were discovered many years ago. And hence the companies, the mines that are mining on parts of their land. And Royal Bafokeng Holdings was formed with the realization that platinum is a finite resource, and the Bafokeng wanted a vehicle that would be a commercial vehicle that would help them diversify their wealth. So our mandate is to grow that endowment. If you think of an endowment, we're not getting additional capital that's coming in. What we received is what we received. So it's very important for us to protect that portfolio that we received initially. And we've grown and diversified the portfolio into various sectors like financial services, telecoms, infrastructure, etc., with the purpose of creating for the next generations of the Bafokeng additional sources of income that are not necessarily solely concentrated in mining. And I think we will always have a very close heritage with mining, but it is important for us to be able to diversify their portfolio. so that the next generation prospers. So ours is to provide them as well with a dividend. So we are an investment company, and through the years, the portfolio has grown to 50 billion. And we aspire to create a portfolio that the next generation can benefit and receive income from, so that that endowment that we received at the beginning is not destroyed.
Speaking of mining, Charl, Sibanye-Stillwater is in the news a lot, right? It's in the news a lot. All kinds of things going on. And you're the CFO. So you've got challenges that have happened. I'm sure you have challenges even now. When you came, I was like, thank God you're here, because I was thinking at 4:00, you're going to call me and say, listen, there's this transaction going down, or there's that and that. I'm not going to make it. How is life as CFO of Sibanye-Stillwater? The challenges that you've had, how have you dealt with them? Give us a picture.
Yeah, so I love every day. You know, I was with my former employer and for 18 years, and then, you know, we got carved out. So I continued that service, but we moved and we created a new company. And you know, we've got an entrepreneurial CEO, and you know, it's a roller coaster ride, but I enjoy every day. You know, no day is the same. You know, and I've chosen this career. I went into mining, and if I have to do it again, maybe I want to go into banking, or, you know, something a little bit less stressful. You know, maybe I want to be a teller in a bank. So all I have to worry at the end of the day is whether I balance or not. But, you know, I really enjoy it. You know, like you say, we've grown the company. We've been through tough times. You know, in 2018, we had a very bad safety record. And, you know, to the extent where a lot of investors were considering, you know, us an uninvestable stock. And we had to work very hard to explain to them what we're doing about safety, you know, what is the journey we're taking with safety. And we've made massive inroads. We haven't arrived. You know, I believe safety is a journey that you have to tackle 24/7, 365 days of the year. If it's not front and center, things will happen. You know, it's a bit like driving with your eyes closed. Maybe nothing happens, but chances are that something can happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, life as a mining CEO is great. You know, yes, now we're going through some tough times. Platinum group metals are not at their all-time highs. In fact, you know, at one stage, palladium was at $3,500. Rhodium was at $30,000. Today, it's $1,000 for palladium, and it's 4,500 for rhodium. So you can see how our revenue base has shrunk. But during that phase, we also took on a lot of debt because we wanted to grow the company. So now it's really just working through that storm. But we were fortunate in that we could, I wouldn't say we were quite clairvoyant, but we realized that things were not going to stay good forever. And we started taking action, I would probably say 2 years before we got into this tough period. And you know, that has really put us in a good space to go through the storm. You know, we always use Noah's rule, which says, don't try and predict storms, rather build arks.
Okay.
So, you know, we've built an ark, and you know, now we can navigate through it.
You know, I titled your chapter Thinking Outside the Boss. And the reason was because you told me about this book, Maverick.
Yes.
And that's your philosophy of managing people. Maybe unpack that a bit. Yeah.
So, you know, when you come out of university and you've got your degree and, you know, you're ready to conquer the world. So I arrived at Lebanon Gold Mine and I was put in accounts. I'm now a postgraduate trainee, and you know, people started talking about working cost. And, you know, now you're fresh out of varsity and you think, what is working cost? And because, I mean, your textbook said it was operating cost, you know, so I had to quietly go and ask somebody behind the scenes, you know, what is this? But when it was probably my second or third year working on the mine, somebody gave me the book Maverick by Ricard du Semler. Now, you know, it's, I mean, the short story is it was a person that took over a family business. You know, he literally tore up the rule book. He fired the board on day one. Now, you know, I can't do that. You know, I can't fire my board. It's the other way around. But you know, he just went unconventional. It was really about turning it into a people's business. I mean, people could decide on their own increases in that business. But similarly, they also were empowered that when a business went through tough times, you know, they could restructure the business themselves. They could take pay cuts. So you know, it really inspired me not to be this gray accountant with a suit, you know, this is what the standard says and this is what you'll do. I mean, I wanted to be different in my philosophy, in my approach, how I work with people, how I deal with people. And that book really gave me a lot of the ammunition. Now, you know, I cannot, like I say, do everything that this guy did, but it gave me a good sense of one day when I look back, you know, what would people say about me? You know, and that was the philosophy of the book for me. And yeah, I took a lot out of it. And yeah, I mean, go and read the book. It reads like a novel. You know, the way that this guy, and he tells the story. Whenever he comes back from holiday, he doesn't know where his office is. And he was the CEO. Because the team felt that they needed that office for something specific. You know, and that was just the way he operated. And yeah, people don't park in my parking, or they don't throw me out of my office, but they can.
Yeah.
You know, but I've also, you know, that subservient leadership also came out of the book.
Yeah.
And my team to this day, I always say to them, we in year end now. So if you ask me, am I thriving or surviving? I'm barely holding on. But my team knows, you know, we're not a hierarchical organization.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to go through one person, another person. I mean, if one of my accountants have written a memo, they can send it straight to me. I can do that first review. I don't mind doing it. I always say, call me if you want me to punch journals at year end.
Yeah.
And it all comes out of that book.
Awesome.